Let's learn how we might make a report kind of button in Scratch. It's important to know that you can't actually make a report function in Scratch. It's a little bit too complex and involved, but what we can do is make what's called a prototype, and they happen all the time in the real world. So when Google's making a new phone, they make a prototype phone that might not be the same as the real phone, but it's a good indication of what it's going to look like once it's actually finished. So that's what we're going to try and do. Here I've got Cybercop as one of my sprites, and then I've just changed my backdrop to space, because hey, space is cool. Alright, to get started, we're going to start creating by, get started by creating our button. To do this, it's an object, right? So we need another sprite. So we've got our Cybercop sprite. I'm going to click on this one here. And this allows us to choose a sprite from some sprites that are already made in Scratch. So let's try that. Over here, there's a whole heap of stuff as I scroll down. Alright, we got this button, and this button, and then like a tick and a cross. I'm just going to play. I'm going to grab this blue button to start with, and I'm going to press OK. Alright, cool. So here's my button. I can move it around, and remember, if we use these tools up here, we can make it bigger, or we can make it smaller. But I'm just going to move it down here, right? Because I think that's a good place for a report kind of area. But we can see it doesn't have any text on it, and you know, what color would a report button be? Do you think it would be blue, or do you think it might be a different color? I'm thinking it might be like an orangey red color. So let's come up to the costumes up here, and we can see that they've already made an orange button. And that's close enough for me. I think an orange button is good enough to like signal danger or like urgency of reporting. So if I click on this orange sprite, it changes my button down to orange, and over here it's got a bunch of options, right? I can reshape it, I can pencil, line, rectangle, ellipse. What I want to do is add some text to it. So I'm going to click in here and I'm going to start writing, and I'm going to write the word report. Alright, that looks pretty good. I'm going to try moving my report to the middle. Okay, that makes more sense. That's looking pretty groovy. Let's come down here and see what happens when I click on some of these colors. Alright, I don't think like, oh look, that looks a bit horrible, right? What color would mean urgency to report? Like when you're reporting something, you want to do it straight away. It's really important. So I think one of these reds would look good. Alright, that red looks pretty good, I think. So that's going to be my report button. Okay, so I've got the costume, I've got the object, it says button 2, I've got Cybercop, that all looks pretty cool. Let's have a look at how we can code our report button, so when we click on it, something happens. Remember, whenever we want something to trigger, when we do something to happen, when we press a keyboard, or when we click on something, or when we press the green flag, we always need to come up to this events menu. And when we come to this event, we can see, oh, there's a button here, or there's a coding block that says when this sprite is clicked. I'm going to try that out. So we can see here's one sprite, Cybercop, and now that I've clicked on button 2, it says when this sprite is clicked, we want something to happen. Now I haven't really thought about what that something is. Let's make it when we click on this button, we're going to change the backdrop. I'm going to change the backdrop to, instead of space, I'm going to create my own backdrop. So I've clicked on stage and backdrops, and I've clicked on backdrops, and now it says here that I can paint a new backdrop. That's cool. Alright, so it's white, and I might just paint with the text tool, and I'm just going to really quickly just write report received, right? And then I'm going to grab my little select tool, I'm going to drag it around. That looks pretty good. Okay, we can see when I move between the two, it updated. So I'm going to see if I can just drag this again. Select all this. Oh, something crazy is going on. I think it's because my screen is zoomed in so you can see what's happening. Let me zoom out again and see how we go. I'm going to take this stuff and I'm going to move it. There we go. And click between the two, and it says report received. Okay, let's see how this works when we play our game. I'm going to go into my scripts and click on button 2, and when this sprite is clicked, I'm going to come over to my looks. Let me make it big again. And I'm going to switch the backdrop to, I'm going to click on backdrops again. You can see it's called backdrop number 1. That doesn't make much sense. That's a terrible name for a backdrop. You can rename your backdrops, and you should, so that way they make sense to you. I'm going to right click on this. No, not. Oh, sorry, up here. This is how we change the name of our backdrop. We've got this little text box. I'm going to write here, report received. Now when I click on my button 2 and on my scripts, we can see here it's going to switch the backdrop to report received. Okay, that kind of works. So when I press the green flag and I click on report, it says report received. But before that, we had that other cool backdrop. So I'm going to come down to backdrops and click on my space one again. And this time, I'm going to try clicking on the report button. Okay, that worked. That's cool. But the problem is, every time I start my game, it's on this, and I don't want to have to go down here and backdrops and space every time. So let's have a look at how we can set a default kind of backdrop. So when we start the game. So we're going to go to our events this time, and when we start the game, when we press on this green flag, we're going to go to our looks, and we're going to switch the backdrop. I'm going to switch the backdrop down to space. So whenever we start the game, we're going to start in space. And whenever we click on this report sprite, it's going to change the backdrop to report received. Let's have a look at how this works now. So start the game, click on report, it says report received. Awesome. So this is a really quick prototype of what it might look like if you implement a report button in your game.